Big moves across the AFC North are already starting to reshape how the Pittsburgh Steelers have to think about this draft. And the ripple effect is very real when you break down what just happened around them. The biggest takeaway right now is that while other teams are making aggressive decisions, the Steelers are still carefully positioning themselves, especially when it comes to the defensive side of the ball early in the draft. We have a lot to discuss here, so without further ado, come with me and I'll tell you everything. But first, be sure to click the like button and write in the comments. Go Steelers! Now, what stands out immediately is how much attention is being placed on the secondary, particularly the safety position. The current roster has versatility, no doubt about that, but there's a clear question mark when it comes to a true free safety. Someone who can control the deep field with speed and range. That's something being discussed heavily internally, and it aligns with how the defense is expected to evolve this season. There's also a very clear philosophy forming under the new defensive structure. Flexibility. The idea is not to lock players into rigid roles, but to create a unit where defensive backs can move around, disguise coverages, and adapt snap by snap. That's where a player like Jalen Ramsey becomes extremely important. He's being viewed less as a fixed-position defender and more like a chess piece, someone who can line up in multiple spots, shift responsibilities, and create confusion for opposing offenses. But here's the key issue. While that flexibility is valuable, it also exposes a gap. If Ramsey is moving between slot, safety, and other roles, then someone else needs to anchor the deep part of the field consistently. And that's why the free safety discussion keeps coming back as a potential priority early in the draft. When you look at the prospects tied to that role, the focus isn't just on talent, it's on fit. The Steelers don't just need a hard-hitting box safety. They need someone who can cover ground, read plays quickly, and allow the rest of the secondary to be aggressive underneath. That's why certain names are gaining traction internally, especially those who bring versatility along with range and instincts. At the same time, this isn't happening in isolation. The Steelers' draft strategy is being directly impacted by what other teams are doing, especially within the division. The Bengals making a massive move to acquire a top defensive tackle for a first-round pick completely changes how the board might fall. It also affects which teams now have multiple early selections, increasing competition for top talent before Pittsburgh even gets on the clock. And that's where things get tricky, because while defense is clearly on the table early, it's not the only priority. Wide receiver and offensive line are still major needs, and depending on how the board unfolds, the Steelers could find themselves forced to adjust in real time. If the top offensive options disappear early, going defense, specifically in the secondary, becomes not just an option, but potentially the smartest move. So right now, the Steelers are sitting in a position where flexibility isn't just a defensive philosophy, it's a draft strategy. They have to be ready for multiple scenarios, and the early rounds could define the identity of this team heading into the season. The real question is, if the board doesn't fall their way on offense and the best value is at safety, do you think the Steelers should pull the trigger early on defense and secure that missing piece in the secondary? And that decision becomes even more critical when you look at how the draft board is starting to shift right in front of them. Because now, it's not just about identifying needs, it's about timing and positioning. The Steelers are watching multiple teams ahead of them that could target the exact same positions, especially wide receiver, which creates pressure to either move up or pivot completely. What complicates things even more is how many teams in that mid-first-round range are in similar situations. There are at least 4 or 5 franchises that could realistically take a receiver before Pittsburgh even has a chance. That means if the Steelers are locked into getting a playmaker on offense, they might have to be aggressive and trade up. But that comes at a cost, and that cost could prevent them from addressing other key areas like the secondary or the offensive line later in the draft. This is where the defensive approach starts to make even more sense. Because if the value at receiver is gone and the price to move up is too high, staying put and taking the best defensive back available could actually be the smarter long-term move, especially when you consider how the defense is being built, not just for this season, but for adaptability moving forward. Another layer to this is how the Steelers view positional value versus impact. Some of the best players in this draft class play positions that historically aren't taken extremely high, like safety. But internally, there's an understanding that a player who can transform how your defense operates is worth that investment. A true difference maker in the secondary can elevate everyone else. Pass rush, coverage schemes, even turnover production. And let's not forget the importance of depth. The Steelers aren't just looking for starters. They're looking for contributors who can rotate, adjust, and step into different roles when needed. That's why prospects who can play multiple positions are being heavily evaluated. It's not just about what they do today, but what they can become within this system over time. At the same time, the offensive side can't be ignored. The need for a guard to stabilize the interior line is very real, especially after losing key pieces. And the wide receiver room still lacks that extra weapon who can change games consistently. So every decision in the first round has a domino effect on what they'll be able to do in rounds 2 and 3. This is why the Steelers are in such a fascinating position right now. They're not desperate in one area, but they're not fully complete anywhere either. That balance can be a strength if they play it right, or a weakness if they miss on key opportunities. And as the draft gets closer, one thing is becoming clear. This isn't going to be a predictable move. The Steelers are keeping their options open, and depending on how those first 10 to 15 picks unfold, we could see them go in a direction that surprises a lot of people. Now, I want to hear from you. If you were making the call on draft night, would you stay patient and take the best defensive player available? Or would you risk it all and move up to secure that offensive weapon? If you're enjoying this kind of breakdown and want to stay ahead of every move the Steelers make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. And don't forget to click the video that's on your screen right now, because all the latest updates, analysis, and behind-the-scenes insights, you're only going to find them here first. Go Steelers!